President Trump, what's your thought about why the markets are so spooked? Do you think they don't like the tariffs, or do they not like the uncertainty with some of the changes and the carve-outs?
Well, a lot of them are globalist countries and companies that won't be doing as well because we're taking back things that have been taken from us many years ago. We've been treated very unfairly as a country.
We've dominated the entire world for the past century, but we've been treated very unfairly. Yes, we are responsible, and for the world of events. We're the most consequential state, the most influential, most impactful state in the entire world, and the world largely looks this way because of our intervention. But we've been treated unfairly. Okay, make no mistake, folks. We're the victim. Let's not forget. The United States is the number one. What's interesting about the United States is that it's not only the most victimizing country, it's the biggest victim. It's not only the most frightening country, it's the most frightened by everything. Never forget 9/11.
We do everything for all these countries, and a lot of these are globalist in nature. They have.
What do we do? What do we do for all these countries? I really want to know. What is he referring to? Turning them into debt slaves to the American corporate plantation? Hitting them with austere policies? Turning their states into international pariahs if they don't go along with American business imperatives? I mean, what do we do that's so helpful, so beneficial to the rest of the world? Why is the rest of the world flocking to the only competing alternative economic bloc that now outpaces us in economic growth every year? I'm referring to BRICS, of course. Every week we see a new country being invited to join BRICS. Why is that? It probably has something to do with China not trying to conduct financial imperialism on the victims of U.S. imperialism, as these victims of U.S. imperialism try to recapture their countries, their land, their resources, their labor, and use it to benefit their people. It might have something to do with that. Maybe. There's a really good book called Super Imperialism by Michael Hudson that goes over all of this.
If you're outside of the United States, it's going to be a little bit different. We just weren't treated right. We were ripped off as a country. I've been saying it for a long time. And
ripped off? Well, whose fault is that? If you really feel like that, Donald Trump, I mean, you are the most powerful man heading the most powerful country on earth. That must mean that you suck at doing business if you really feel like you are ripped off. I mean, the United States is the sole creditor country in the entire world. Everyone is in debt to the dollar. Everyone's in debt to the United States and to the financial institutions which are controlled by the United States. The dollar is the reserve currency. So how is it that we're getting robbed? How are we getting ripped off? I don't even understand that. Thanks for joining me here. I'm just ranting and raving. Let me get I see that there's some sounds happening on the stream. So, thank you to Hey1 and Unbraced Sun and Too Real for this. Hello, blah, blah, blah. Welcome in. It has been a minute. Am I keeping up with Syria? Not intimately, no. Hello to you as well. I'm Imran, sorry. I don't know if I pronounced your name right. Between the resistance and the new government, no, I just, I haven't been keeping up really. I just know that, the HTS Al-Qaeda offshoot is now controlling the Syrian government after the fall of Assad, and that is a big benefit for Israel as they carve up more Syrian territory. And, it's probably Israel that's behind the resistance because, as I've heard from Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate, that Israel obviously is always a divide and conquer strategy. They provide funding for HTS, and then once HTS gets in power, they now fund the opposition. So
did it to a certain extent in the first administration, but with COVID coming in, we had to focus on that toward the end. But we had the greatest economy in history in the first.
Greatest economy in history, but we're the most ripped off country, and we'd be getting a bad deal.
Administration, and I think we'll do even better now. But this is something that we have to do. There'll always be a little short-term interruption. I don't think it's going to be big, but the countries and companies that have been ripping us aren't particularly happy with what I'm doing. But the United States will be very happy. And, our farmers are going to be very happy. And again, there'll be disruption. But in the end,
everything that Trump is doing right now is making it worse for American consumers, American businesses, and American farmers. That's what happens when you have the economic understanding of a toddler and you behave like a little petulant child. And that's what tariffs do, okay?
Before with China, we signed an unbelievable deal with China, $50 billion in purchases, and we're doing great. Biden, however, when he came in, they never enforced that deal. So that's the only thing that basically you have globalist companies that have been ripping us off that won't be able to rip us off any longer. I think that's
globalist companies. Who are these globalist companies, Trump? Apple, Amazon, Nvidia, where are all the biggest transnational corporations? They're all based in the United States, okay? So you want to cry about globalism. Globalism for who? It's globalism for corporations. It's globalism for capital. It's globalism for the political and economic elites. When they decry globalism, they just mean globalism for the public, regular workers. But I don't understand what he's just a fountain of lies. I know. I enjoy Richard Wolff's analysis tremendously. And oftentimes I use his videos as templates for sketches where I want to communicate those ideas that he presents.
The big charges.
Have you been influenced, some of these exemptions that have been announced and some of these temporary delays, have you been influenced in those decisions because of the market reaction?
Well, there are no delays at all. No, nothing to do with the market. I'm not even looking at the market because long term, the United States will be very strong with what's happening here. Now, these are countries.
Yeah, he's not gonna talk about his L's. He doesn't want to look at the market. He doesn't want to look at the market. He's like, no, look, what is he really saying? Short term, I know it looks really bad right now. I know it looks like we're heading for a recession. I know inflation has never been higher. We're not going to talk about that. We're talking about the long term. When has a capitalist ever been concerned about the long term?
And companies, foreign companies that have been ripping us off, and no president did anything.
Foreign companies. Name one that's ripping us off. Who's we? In this sentence, in this claim.
Until I came along, and then I did a lot about it. We took in tariffs from China, $600 billion. Nobody else took in 10 cents from China. They never did. But when COVID came along.
And if that's true, where's this? Did China pay $600 billion to the United States? That's how he's making it seem. Of course not. Whatever money that is made off of tariffs comes from the American pockets. It comes from American wallets. China does not pay anything. It just means that whoever the American consumers or businesses that are buying Chinese products, they'll just have to pay more now. Is he really trying to still double down on the idea that China is paying the cost of these tariffs?
Focus on COVID. We did a great job. We got rid of that.
It was probably the worst governmental response of any national disaster that you could think of. COVID. How many people died because of Trump's botched response to the pandemic? He's responsible for millions of deaths. You do realize that.
We ended up handing over with a market that was higher than it was previous.
Because it's die for the economy, bitch. That's capitalism for you. Oh, those are essential workers. That COVID was really like a learning experience. That should have taught you a lot about what kind of world we live in, because before the pandemic, we were hearing so much about how essential billionaires are. But in the midst of a disaster, all of a sudden, the working class, the people that deliver our food and make our food and deliver our products, our commodities, those are essential workers. All of a sudden. Nobody was saying, oh, thank God for those essential billionaires pulling us through there still were actually people like Mark Benioff were patting themselves on the back saying like, man, thank God for us because we really, we were so philanthropic during that pandemic. And, the amount of billionaires doubled, that it might even be modest, but I think something like they amassed $4 trillion in that span of like 2020 to like 21, 22. That we could pull that study up too. That's from Oxfam, I believe. But $4.1 trillion. Billionaires got richer. Billionaires got $4.1 trillion richer, while the bottom 90% of the population got poorer. So, I mean, just that these you can say these facts, and it's just like you say it, and then it washes off like off a duck's back. It's like water off a duck's back. It's like people listen to it, and then they just and then they just start apologizing for it. But I mean, these are pretty crazy figures. These are pretty crazy statistics that I think are hugely, vastly important. Elon says the fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy. Evil, I think, is the absence of empathy. What can you say to that? I mean, it's absolutely disgusting.
COVID coming in, but this is very much about companies and countries that have ripped off this country, our beloved USA, and they're not going to be ripping us off anymore. So, I think that has an impact on the market.
When they say ripping us off, who is us? Who do you think he's referring to? The United States is the global superpower, okay? They control, I say they, I mean the ruling class of the United States controls the entire world finance system and all the institutions, all the global institutions. So who is he talking about when he says they're ripping us off? I think these are euphemisms for class war. I mean, he's doing the ripping off. He and his class, the people that have put him in power to do the bidding of those in power, are ripping off the general public. And they have been. That's neoliberalism for you. That's capitalism for you. And that's what's happening. I mean, that's what's always been happening. How can he say these things with a straight face? He's, one of the richest people in the world. You have some thoughts in your head about certain people in this world. Yes, I do too. I would hope so, I hope his voters aren't happy about the fash stuff. I don't think so, man. I don't. Something needs to happen.
Sir, this is a slate of nominees that's been prepared by the Presidential Personnel Office. It includes a number of sub-cabinet level appointments, a number of your ambassadors that have been previously announced, and also, crucially, given the administration's concerted effort.
How have the richest billionaires living off government money, living off our money, how have they convinced us that the enemy of the people are poor people living off government money? I don't get that. I mean, it seems fairly obvious, glaringly obvious who our enemies are. What is, what is to blame? What is the problem in society? And how have they convinced us that the richest people are our saviors and the poorest people are our enemies? I don't get it.
If Hamas does not release hostages, that the U.S. and Israel could take some action. What does that mean in your eyes? Is that military action? Would you join strikes with Israel?
Well, you're going to find out. I had the honor of spending a lot of time yesterday with...
Because really what's going to scare the people of Gaza is another airstrike. I'm sure you could threaten them with another airstrike, and that would really get them shaken.
Quite a few of the people that we got out, and I can't believe how badly treated they were, really badly treated. Stories that you wouldn't even believe. Some of them.
So the British colonized Ireland, but they're our friends. The British colonized Palestine, but, well, they're not our friends.
Documented. Some of it was so bad you couldn't really, I don't think you can put it on. And it's a shame. And they said one thing, they have 59 hostages, of which many of them are killed. They want to know if we could just continue. They said without us, look, Biden wasn't able to get anybody out. We came along and they started releasing. But we have 59 left, of which 24 are living. The rest are dead. And I put out a statement. It's sort of self-explanatory, I think. But somebody's going to have to get a lot rougher than they're getting. It's a shame. And those 24 that are living, because they were with them just 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so he's saying that Gaza there's something a lot more. It's not rough enough in Gaza yet. It needs to get a little bit more rougher. and then they're going to wisen up.
Weeks ago, depending on when they
Despicable.
got out. And I think we're doing a really great job. We're cutting it down. We have to for the sake of our country. You can't have that kind of fat. It's bloat, and like nobody's ever seen before. Where you need 20.
I mean, remember that every concept is inseparable from social class. You know, every idea that is expressed has a class identity to it. So when you hear a billionaire such as our president, a member of the ruling class, when you hear him say that there's bloated government spending and there's waste and there's fraud, you have to also factor in his own class interests here. You have to factor in that it's a specific, what he considers waste, fraud, and bloated government spending is going to look different to the rest of the population because he has his own designs and he's advancing his class objectives. And so he's not referring to the bloated government spending on a foreign country such as Israel. He's not referring to the bloated $1 trillion military budget. He's not mentioning the billions of dollars that the Pentagon's lost. Literally just does not know where it went. And I forget the figure of that. I think if I remember correctly, it was something like hundreds of billions of dollars. No, we're talking about the Consumer Protection Bureau. We're talking about Social Security. We're talking about Department of Education. These are all programs and government agencies that are, in theory, conceptually and practically carrying out policies that benefit general workers such as you and I. The NRLB, there you go. What is that? That's the National, what does that stand for? Labor Bureau. The parasite class, there you go. That's a good way of saying it.
And then they have 120,000 people, and you just don't need that many. And it happens with companies, and it happens with governments, I guess. You could go to a lot of governments, you'd see the same thing. But we're trying to get it down. We want to be able, next year, if we could balance the budget. I think there's a good chance we could balance the budget next year. We have a lot of good things happening. Plus, we have a lot of revenue.
Balancing the budget is an easy task. All you have to do is impose a modest tax on the wealthiest 1%. And, the top 20 billionaires are worth something like $2.1 trillion. That's just the top 20. The deficit each year is like $4 trillion. And studies have been done that show that if you just simply tax corporations, simply tax billionaires, that immediately alleviates the deficit for that year. That's obviously antithetical to what Trump is proposing. He's already talking about giving another round of historic tax cuts to corporations. That's what he did in his first year, his first term, 2017. He's going to do it again. How is he going to pay for it? Well, he's going to gut Social Security, and any money that goes to poor people that are just trying to survive. Well, that's waste. That's wasteful. The poor don't have rights. That's true. Yeah, Elon has been investigated by numerous government agencies, which is all the same ones that he's gone after: USAID, the FAA. He's got so many open investigations on his government contracts and his business practices that I don't even know what the number is, but it's across several different government agencies. And obviously, we know that USAID is corrupt. It's one of those. It's responsible for regime change. That's where our money goes. A lot of our money goes to that. But have they mentioned that? Have they mentioned, when you think of USAID? Give me your honest response here. When Donald Trump or Elon Musk talks about USAID, are they talking about the CIA covert operations that USAID funds? and collaborates with? Do they mention USAID's involvement in the 2014 coup in Ukraine, for example? No. What we hear about is there's condoms to Gaza, Mozambique. And even that's not accurate because they make it seem like condoms are being sent to Hamas. Or we're talking about transgendered mice. Or we're talking about, money being sent to African countries that you've never heard of, which is another topic all entirely in of itself. But no, so we're only hearing about, it's about cultural stuff. It's playing to these fears, this racism, latent or obvious in his voting base. It's drumming all of those cultural fears up. The Great Replacement Theory, all these things. And when you are wreaking economic violence on the general public in a country that is, in theory, a liberal democracy where you have these mechanisms in the government to safeguard and protect our democratic values, where you need the public to go along with what you're doing, then you need to play the culture war. You can't talk about the class war because you're their class enemy. Why would you want to make those things known? You want to play upon their differences in culture, divide and conquer. They make a class war look like a culture war to keep us too busy to go after the issues that are actually affecting us. Isn't there some special quote by LBJ, for example? Richard Nixon also understood this very well. What's known as the Southern Strategy. Republicans can't obviously promote their or speak upon their actual platforms, so they have to get support from voters by playing upon their racist, xenophobic fears. So we talk about immigrants. We talk about dirty Mexicans and the Russians or the Chinese or the Iranians. Make it seem as like there's some foreign existential threat, and it's one big grift.
Stop scrolling! Hey YouTube friends, if you like my content, please subscribe to my new backup page right here. It's in the link in the caption. Look at it. It's right there. See?
Nixon ordered Cambodian genocide. Sent cruise missiles to Sudan, people died. Gave the orders to do drone strikes.